Okay, hi everybody. It's another edition of DM56. Let's see, we'll go to gallery view here, see who's here. We got just a few folks here, so you folks have the floor. What kind of, so Debbie, your spacing question was solved last session,
Yeah.
correct? You got any new ones, or Anne?
No, not really. I haven't been able to play with anything since we last met since I was last there 2 days ago. I had other things I needed to take care of, so I haven't been working on my site.
That's really fine with me. In fact, if neither of you have questions and nobody else shows up, we can go out and have fun. You can go to a big gathering outside right now, right? So,
right.
Well, I've got to do my weekly food shopping at Trader Joe's downtown, so there's probably more of a line now than there would be at, like, if I got there at 5 o'clock, but still.
yeah, I have no idea how that line works. I know that
Yeah,
it hasn't been too bad for me lately to get into Trader Joe's. Oh, there's Catherine.
They're really organized. Even if there's a line, it seems to go quickly. So
They were really nice. Being over 70, I just drove in and they came out and grabbed my list. And
oh, you played the senior. You played the senior card.
I did. Well, I'm a senior, so why not play the senior card?
It makes sense to me if you don't have to wait in those lines.
And we have the highest possibility of mortality.
Yeah, yeah, it is a serious thing. I see Katharina has arrived. Hi.
Hi.
You doing well? So have you any new questions?
Do I have any new questions?
Because these folks don't. So maybe we're meeting too often now. I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but I don't have any questions now.
Maybe we ought to wait a little while and see if the questions pop in and pop up.
Yeah, we'll wait a few more minutes. But Anne hasn't had time to do anything since yesterday and Debbie's stuff seems to be solved right now. So if you don't have any questions and nobody else shows up, I would just as soon call it here we go.
Here we go.
Amanda.
What I thought I would do with that really long header that wasn't wrapping right was just shortening it by a lot and then putting some, I do have a question. Putting something in a byline, but I do have a question for you.
Okay, Anne, shoot.
So let me share my screen.
Please do.
And the question is, because I don't know what this means, and in my theme, I don't really like what it does on this, so I just got, when in case of doubt, just get rid of it.
Yeah, when in doubt, delete is always a good rule for a lot of things.
Yeah. So, but I didn't know if I'm deleting something that's essential for search or whatever. So if that's
well, let's look at that. What are you deleting then?
It's something. Okay, so let me go into the site. And Katarina did not delete hers. Right underneath here, it has this little tiny subhead.
Right.
Let me go into the customize so you can see where that pops up and view it with it on and view it with it off. It was so tiny that it's like, well, why am I bothering with something that's...
So is it your tagline? Yeah, right?
Tagline.
Yeah.
So is it important to have? I mean, I could just...
No, it's really not important at all. It's up to you. If you uncheck the display site title and tagline, does the title go away as well as the tagline?
I think so. Yep.
Oh, yes. You probably don't want to do it that way.
And I didn't want to do that either because I had put a CSS in here to turn it orange on the hover.
Oh.
Maybe because it's the hover. Well, I also changed the color, so I'm just not gonna.
If you don't publish it, it won't stick.
Yeah, no changes have been made permanently. You don't have to worry about it.
So let's just go back to. So it was so tiny, it's like less than 1/8 of an inch, hard to read.
Yeah, now if you want it there and you want to make it bigger, I'm sure we could figure out how to style it. That doesn't seem too hard.
Well, one of the problems with making it bigger than you get to as you move down under other kinds of devices, then it starts changing everything on the page. So I didn't really think I needed it when I had the heading of that other page that said Art in the New Universe. And I
don't think you need, I mean, seriously, if you don't think you need it, then you don't need it, because simpler, in my mind, is always better.
So it's not part of the search engine thing?
Yeah, that was my only concern.
I would say all text on your page is helpful for search engines, but it's really a question of how you want to do this. What's in your title, your HTML title tag, which is what, when you go to the edit page in WordPress, you know, where it says title there, that's the most important text on the page. The H1, the largest headline, the most important headline, that's the second most important text on the page. So if you're paying attention to those, I wouldn't worry about this tagline. I would be more concerned about how you're writing your copy. So just in general, for search engines, the title tag, and I'm specifically talking about the title tag in HTML, is the most important text for search engines. Second to that is your H1, or your most important headline on the page. After that, it's really more about how you're writing your copy. The link text, when you're making links to somewhere, the text that is in the link, those words should be more important than the other text. Your subheadlines are important. And of course, your alt text and images is important. But I wouldn't stress too much on any one thing, because it's an aggregate of all these different factors that the search engines look for. So
I have two H1s on this page. One is the my name in the printmaking, and the other one is in this an ID that's the content. That's the H1 down here, the art in the new universe.
That's interesting. So does the theme make both of those H1s? Oh, thank you for muting.
I don't know. I'd have to open it in Firefox. I can do it and see, and then use a developer tool and check all the HTML.
It would be unusual that the theme would make two H1s. Now, let's see. So I know that you and Debbie and Anne, and you and Debbie and Amanda, I think Amanda's had some coding, right, Amanda? I think she has. Katharina, do you know any coding?
Well, I forgot.
A long time ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, so you guys are basically familiar with what an H1 is, which is the most important headline. Now, under the, before HTML5, it was accepted conventional wisdom that you should only have one H1 on a page, because the H1 is, of course, the most important headline on the page. So you can't have, theoretically, two most important headlines on the page, right? Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't do it. You could have two H1s on a page, but it definitely would show that you are not understanding the hierarchy of the information you're publishing to have two, quote, most important headlines. But that logic has shifted a little, because with HTML5, they created new structural elements. So in HTML4, you used a lot of div tags to create things like containers for your menu, container for your footer, container for a sidebar, container for your main content, and so forth. And in HTML5, they created new tags for those things. So for example, some of the new structural tags in HTML include nav, which is your navigation menu, header, footer, aside, which you can think of as a sidebar, but it's not necessarily on a side physically, and aside, so it could be a box anywhere on the page. In other words, some piece of information that's an aside to the main content. And also something called article and something called section. And you can have sections inside of articles, or articles inside of sections. And a section or an article could have an H1. So if you had, let's say, your page and you were defining it as having two articles on the page, they could each have their own H1, and that would not violate the old rules of, oh, you should never have one H1 on a page, because now you have some clearly defined content sections. Each could, in theory, have an H1. So it's not true that you should always have one H1, but it is true you should only have one H1 unless you understand the structure and you're having your H1s in these separate major content boxes. So if the theme is in fact putting one H1 in something like an article and another H1 in something like a section or two different sections or two different articles, that's actually okay. But it wouldn't be okay to have two H1s like in the same body without being in different containers.
So the bottom one is in a container called content.
So it's a container called div with an ID of content, correct?
Well, I can.
There's not a content HTML tag, so it would have to be a div with an ID or a class of
Let me
content.
read it to you.
I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
It's a div with an ID of content in this class of site dash content.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then that is an H1. It used to say prints, but now
Yeah.
it says
So you may have two H1s, and that's okay. And then, of course, the text in both of those H1s is very important in terms of search engine optimization. What I would caution against is having too many H1s, because you might think, oh, if H1 is heavily weighted from the search engines, I'll just create more H1s on the page, and I'll have more heavily weighted keywords in there, and that'll help me with Google. Well, and I don't know exactly where this point is, but at some point, probably after like a couple of H1s, Google's going to say, oh, you're a scammer. You're just trying to get around the search engine's algorithm that is what we're using to see how good your page is. And if you're really trying to game the system, if Google thinks you're trying to game the system, Google says, okay, I'm going to downgrade this page instead of upgrade it. So there is a danger in trying to do like excessive search engine optimization the wrong way. So I would caution against having too many H1s on a page. Personally, I think 1 or 2 is safe. Beyond 2, I don't really know how safe that would be in terms of.
We have no control over that being an H1. I mean,
Right, and I would assume that the themes wouldn't create a bunch of H1s. I could see 1 or 2. Well, 1 always, 2 maybe. Beyond that, unless you have 3 distinct sections, each with its H1, beyond that, I'd be very careful about just creating more H1s or having a theme that had lots of H1s. But they don't generally do that for that reason.
So what the HTML is creating for this page, that the title is indeed my name and the printmaking and photography.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get down, I haven't gotten out of the head section yet.
So let me talk about the title, since this has come up. The titles, as I said, is pretty much the most important text on the page in terms of search engine optimizations. So Google will look at the text in the title as the most important. And since it's the title, it's supposed to be fairly descriptive and a bit brief. So whatever words you put in the title, that you should spend more than 30 seconds figuring that out. So remember that you're not just titling the page, you are creating the most important keywords for search engine optimization. You're also creating what shows up in somebody's bookmark page. When they bookmark your page, they see your title text. And that's how they know what the page is in their bookmark list. So you want to put words in your title that you think people are searching on to find you. I mean, this is, of course, if you care about search engine optimization, then you want to think carefully about the words in your title. Now, there's nothing wrong with putting your name in the title, but in a sense, you already own that space. You already, if your name is in different places in your website, if somebody searches on your name, that's already going to come up in Google, and you don't have competition for that. Well, actually, you could. Snaky people will actually put their competitors' keywords in their keywords, and that's something that Google will blackball you for, by the way, but it's still done. But other than that, you're not competing with anybody for your own name. So if you think that people would be searching on your name to find you, then that's a good thing. If you don't need that, you might want to try to optimize those words that are so valuable in your title by using some words other than your name, again, because you're not competing for that space, and something that people might search on that you want to provide that service that they're searching for. So what I'm saying is the words in your title, that's your most important copywriting decision. So look at it that way. And if you do searches for your competitors, which if you're in a business and you have competitors, you should be doing periodically, look at the text in their title tag, in their code, because that is what they did was very successful since they came up when you searched, right? So if you search on printmaking and photography, you look at who will come up at the top of the Google list. What do they have in their title? Well, I bet they have printmaking and photography in their title. Maybe nothing else if that's the first one. I don't know. But there's an art to search engine optimization copywriting, and that's a big part of it.
And there's something, it's using a script to display on the page that banner theme title then.
Is that Clara, the phone number? I just want to make sure I'm going to I'm just going to rename you here.
Thank you.
So it just picks up from different scripts from the different parts of the theme. So it automatically plasters whatever you have created in the customize as being your banner.
Okay.
And then I think somewhere on each specific page, it looks at that that content H1. But the home page, picks up and puts a page or a post on the home page. So the home page is a little different than all the other pages.
Yeah, that's common in themes. Your home page is your special page. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't need that tag thing then.
Yeah, you don't need it.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
All right. Hello, Amanda. You're at the beach.
Yeah, it's nice outside.
Yeah, I can see that. Actually, it is nice outside. Who's got some questions? We had a good round of troubleshooting yesterday, so.
I have kind of like a design question.
Shoot.
So after taking like DM8 and now sort of doing a website, and can you talk about like kind of how you make a cohesive brand across, like if you do a business card and your website, and because you're kind of talking just a minute ago about naming and tags, and I know that's more geared towards SEO stuff. But
well, yeah, that's a great question, and that is a little more of a DM8 question, but yeah, it's a great question. So the way I look at it, and you'll get different answers from different people, depending on what they're focused on. Well, number one, I would say, and especially in today's environment, your online presence is paramount. So having your own domain name is just essential. I mean, it's just, that's a given. You don't want to be under Google Sites or Yahoo or something. You want your own domain name, right? And even if you're using a third-party hosting service that does these online stores for you and so forth, they usually give you the option to have your own domain name. You want your own domain name. And I would go a little further than that. I've noticed that some people, they get their own domain name for their website, for their business, and they don't use it for their email. And for the life of me, I just don't understand that. They have some really nice domain name, and then their email address is, joe@gmail.com. It's like, well, what are you using Gmail for? And your branding is a little lacking here. So if you want to, you use the word cohesive, right? Cohesive branding, exactly, across all things like web and email and print. I mean, so why the heck people do that? I'll be honest with you, I think it's just laziness. And I would say the first thing is you have your domain name, you're using it in your branding for your website, as well as your email address for that cohesion. And that's what's on your business card, not, joe@gmail. I mean, it's not going to hurt you all that much, but to me, it just shows a lack of cohesion. And like, wow, that's interesting branding. You have your own domain name and you're advertising Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail or something. It just doesn't Comcast. It doesn't make any sense to me. People do that all the time. It's very common. I think it's just because people don't understand email. But once you have a hosting account and you're hosting a website, you can set up any email addresses you want at your domain name. You can have, Sue@yourdomainname.com. And, if if you're hiring people, you can have resumes at your domainname.com where people send resumes, you know. You can have office at your domainname.com, you know, whatever. So to me, that's something that's often overlooked and I don't understand it. Then graphically, you really have to think about both print and web at the same time. And I find that most people don't. When they're coming up with their logo or their branding, they don't seem to understand that it's really important how the graphics work on a website, because it has to look good on a phone and a large screen and printed. So the looking good on the phone is the thing I would start with, which always to me suggests simpler logos and branding ideas. Simpler is always, in my opinion, better. That may not have been true before the whole web explosion. But when things get reduced to a smaller size, a lot of detail is lost. It's just the way it works. So also you have to think about the horizontal versus vertical nature of the shape of your logo. You may have a horizontal kind of branding logo and a vertical or round one, you know, because you might use it in different places. And so depending on your design, you may be able to adapt the same general branding to different dimensions. But clearly you should always have something that's going to work well on a web page. So you don't want, like, what doesn't work very well are like vertical things, you know, they just don't work well on a web page. I mean, you'd have to rearrange a web page to accommodate that in a pretty serious way. So the easiest thing to do, the less friction, I'm into less friction, is to come up with something that's more horizontal than vertical. You know, maybe round, but definitely not too vertical, because that's just not going to work well on web pages. You know, I've seen like nicely done vertical business cards and so forth, and you can have an 8.5 by 11 sheet with a vertical logo down the side. You know, that works really well. When you get to the web, it works less well unless you've really designed your site to work around that, which is kind of a pain, but you could do it. So thinking about dimensions and what's going to work with your web page, and specifically in WordPress with your theme, right? So will my graphic design easily integrate into this theme that has this huge banner image on the top of the homepage, or really small banner, or somewhat very horizontal, you know? So you have to look at what are the physical limitations of the spacing of your theme and see how easily your branding fits into that. So that's part of choosing your theme too, and your branding. So if you're doing it at the same time, it's better. But you may already have your kind of general graphical outlines of your branding, and so maybe that would inform your theme decision. Or maybe the other way around, where you really like this theme and you haven't finalized your graphics yet for your branding. So maybe then you want to give what looks best in that theme a real priority in your thinking. So when that word cohesive that you use, that's what I'm focusing on, because that's what some people don't seem to, you know, they'll come up with something really good for print or really good for web, or you know, a great domain name, but they don't use it for email. So, you know, that's always very confusing to me, how people kind of have that disjointed approach. And so you use the word cohesive, which is perfect. So that's kind of my general thinking on it. Now, in terms of simplicity, again, color is really important, especially if you think people are going to be printing out stuff from your website. So if your logo, if your branding doesn't have a lot of high contrast, or you've got colors that maybe look good on the screen, but if you print it on a black and white printer, it just looks like shit, you might want to rethink that. Let's see. Of course, the picking of the domain name itself is important, and it's very difficult these days because if you've ever tried to register a domain name these days, it's not like it used to be in the 90s. Not much is available.
Yeah.
That's short and to the point without having a lot of hyphens or ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Or not a .com, but it's a dot, you know, whatever.
Or you have people squatting too.
Yeah, so you have to be, you know, you have to put a lot of care into that. And again, the domain name itself is a big factor in the Google search engine algorithm. So, you know, all other things being equal, if you have graphicdesign.com, and I know you don't, and somebody else doesn't, I mean, somebody searches in graphic design, the graphicdesign.com person is going to come above them in the search results pretty much, because Google does weigh the words in your domain name, you know, because that does say something to Google and to people. So, you know, the words and how you pick your domain name is all part of this. And the cart is now usually before the horse. I mean, you know, traditionally you would name your business, then you go out and do all your branding, get your domain name and everything. And I would argue you want to flip that logic around. And if you have that flexibility, I would name your business and your branding based on what good domain name you could get. So that's really flipped around. You don't want to name your business after something somebody else has the best domain name for it. That's going to screw you in the searches right off the bat. And also people might search for you and they go to the competitor. You know, it's like, oh, you know, you might think, oh, Amanda Graphic Design. That's a great name. Somebody else has it. And so then you still call yourself Amanda Graphic Design, but then you get the Amanda Graphic Design Santa Cruz .domain name or something. And that's not going to work, because you're going to lose out to the person that has the better domain name when they search on Amanda Graphic Design. So yeah, that domain name's important. I would say for cohesion, you know, you should be using your email address with your domain name, and also the picking of the logo and the graphics, making sure that they are going to display well on your web pages as well as in print and business cards and flyers. And again, you might have two variations on your branding that are obviously the same company and the same branding, but in different physical dimensions to fit the different media, or not. But those are the main considerations. Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Just trying to figure out what all that is for me personally still.
Yeah, and look at the competition.
Yeah.
We talked about this in the DM8, researching the competition.
Mm-hmm.
The search engine optimization person that I've had a long relationship with for years, Steve, he's a great guy. He constantly advises people, you got to keep researching the competition, because there are a lot of really slimy people out there, and they will use your keywords on their web pages to try to get the traffic of people looking for you. They'll literally steal them and put them on their pages. They may even put the name of your company in their pages, you know, so that they can kind of get some of your traffic, which of course Google will blackball you for. But unless you're reported, you can get away with it. So what he does for his clients, he would periodically search, and he would report to Google, these people are stealing my keywords, and then Google will blackball them, right? So there's that. You also want to make sure unique content you don't want to reproduce content. Content which is duplicated on different sites is downgraded tremendously by Google. So you may think, oh, I've got permission to use this other article from this other site, so I'll throw it on my website. That downgrades both of you, which is a reason a lot of people don't want to give you permission to reproduce what they're publishing online. If they're aware of how this works, they'll usually say no. Not because they're nasty or don't want to be nice, but because it would downgrade both of you in terms of search results for those kinds of keywords that are on those pages. So all things to be aware of.
John, can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
I've had a business for almost 30 years now, 25 in Santa Cruz.
Oh, wow.
And in those days, what you did is you'd go into the office downtown when you would get your business license, you'd put in the name that you want, and then it would come up. And today you do it on Google, you know, to see if other people have that domain name or have that already listed. And you have to take a name that you can live with and that you can grow into. You know, I started with my website is thecenterforthesoul.com, And when I started, I wasn't teaching at all, but now I'm doing nothing but teach. I mean, I'm doing a lot of sessions and stuff, but I'm also teaching. And I've grown into that name, and it turns out to be a good name for what I do.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and other people have tried to buy my domain name. there's the center, I am the Center for the Soul, and others are Center for the Soul.
Oh.
And so, you know, I found that over time, what binds my business are color selection more than anything, because I don't have a business email on the Center for the Soul, partly because I just want to keep things simple. And I don't really want to have people have to write out the Center for the Soul on every email. So I just do it with Crucio, and I stay with Crucio because I don't like Gmail. So that's my thing. But simplicity, I think, is helpful, and colors help the cohesion of things. Even though my website and my graphic stuff looks different, the colors are the same. So, and they've stayed the same. They might have emphasized this or that a little bit, but it's kind of like being a wedding planner.
And by the way, it's good that you've had that name for a long time, because another, you know, of course, there are a couple hundred different factors in the Google search engine algorithm, but one factor is how long the domain name has been registered, how long it existed. And so if somebody's had the same domain name for 10 years and there's somebody else with a brand new domain name, and all other things being equal, Google will wait and search hits, you know, the one that's been a longer running business with that domain name.
And I don't have to hire anybody to put me on the top of Google search, because you put my name in, or you put the search name in, the Center for the Soul, and I'll come right up. So, you know, I can say, sorry, don't need your help, click.
Yep. That's really good. Yeah, so again, that domain name is kind of important. And a lot of people just don't put as much time into, and domain names are valuable now. I mean, it's virtual real estate, and just like real estate, you know, that space gets crowded, and the competition for this, especially the .coms, right? The .coms are really the most important.
Yeah.
And if you have a good .com, it's actually worth a lot of money. You know, so, and shorter is better, and without hyphens is better.
I feel so much pressure with trying to come up with a website name.
Do you have a domain name?
I don't. That's part of it, is like that inability to kind of commit to something and not really knowing my focus yet and
Right.
what I'm trying to do. So I'm just messing
that's
around.
That's where you really should focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a starting point.
Yeah.
If you think you might want a certain domain name, you want to register it sooner rather than later, and not only register it, but then put up even just a placeholder web page. So again, that starts that Google clock of how long the domain name has been in use. As long as Google sees it online, so that's your starting date. So, I mean, if you're reasonably sure of something, register it right away. Don't wait, and just put up a placeholder page, if nothing else, with that domain name. You know, I'm not even sure, I don't know, 25 domain names.
I have another friend like that.
I'm probably using half of them in different contexts.
Yeah.
You know, different things going on. I have different kinds of sites and all kinds of stuff. And some of the ones I registered a while ago are valuable. So I routinely turn down offers. But the other thing is that, hey, if you've had your thing for 20 or 30 years and maybe you're retiring, hey, you might want to sell your domain name for $10,000 on the way out the door. Who knows, you know? So something else to think about. If anybody's, you know, in that realm. Because domain names are like, they accumulate in value over time, just like regular real estate, and you can sell them. So. And if you have a domain name that you're not using, you should at least like put up a placeholder page or sell it if you're not going to use it, because they are worth money. I mean, they could be worth money, depends on the name. But you know, the cost of having a domain name is just like 10 or 11 bucks a year. That's the registration cost. So, you know, if it's worth it to pay that much a year to keep it, then you should definitely keep it. If you're not doing anything with it and you're not going to, then you might as well sell it if you have an old domain name to get rid of. But
Okay.
yeah, they're kind of fun.
Yeah. There's all kinds of fun ones. One of my current favorites is .ninja. Instead of .com, it's .ninja.
Yeah, they've created so many top-level domains now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I could
You can
kill
get, like,
myself.
.Republican and .Democrat now, and those are
They've got
expensive.
everything. Yeah, they've got everything. Yeah. Back in the early 90s, I was working at Cruise.io, and there were times when we would kind of go online and just like check out domain names, and like all these one-word.coms were available. I was, hey, that's cool. And if I would have just registered a few of those, I'd be retired right now.
Yeah.
There was a guy, I think up in Boulder Creek or something, he registered loans.com. And this is, by the way, this is before you even had to pay for them. They were free. You just registered it and then you had it. There was no charges. They didn't start till later in the 90s. And I think there was some hippie in Boulder Creek, he registered loans.com, and then during the .com boom, I think he sold it for $3 million. And I think Bank of America bought it under a fake auction name. But yeah, you can auction off. There's auction sites for domain names that are, you know, a lot of them. But yeah, I mean, like if I would have just thought a little more strategically back then,
Yeah.
who knew, right? Crazy. So, interesting, marketing and branding. Yeah.
Don,
Yes.
talking back about SEO, do you know about titles in your title on your webpage? Does it matter? Do special characters matter? Because I noticed that a lot of domains, or I mean, a lot of titles have that vertical bar, which I would think would separate the words. But I have a tendency I like to use tildes because, I don't know, probably just because I think they look pretty, but like separate phrases in my titles with tildes, especially on my personal sites. And I was told that wasn't a good idea, but
tildes are a special case, by the way. So let me talk about tildes. Before I get to tildes, I don't think it matters all that much. I mean, the vertical bar, the pipe character,
yeah.
That's used in the same way a lot of places use colons to separate things. Like, so it's real common, and I do this a lot myself. Maybe the title will be Teacher John or Teacher John Home, right?
Yeah.
And then Teacher John colon DM56, and then Teacher John colon DM56 colon exercises. You know, so that, and people use colons that way, or pipes or vertical lines that way as well. It's kind of a hierarchical system.
Huh.
And that's very common. Nothing wrong with that. The special characters themselves are really not going to do much one way or the other, but they are kind of extra characters that you don't need to use. You know what I'm saying? Now,
they
tildes
won't
are
throw the search engines off or anything.
no, but since every one of those characters is valuable in a sense, you know, character real estate, you just want to be as judicious as possible with every one of those characters. The thing about tildes that's weird is tilde is a kind of a fairly special character because it's used in Unix systems to denote a user's directory.
Oh.
So tildes are a special case. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. It just means they have a weird little meaning that might confuse people. So for example, the Unix operating system was created in the 1960s, before the web, essentially before the internet. And the Unix operating system in the 1960s was written by Bell Labs, the telephone company. Yeah, the telephone company needed networking, software for networking, I mean, literally networking. They were the phone company. And so they came up with Unix, and it was also developed by some universities like Berkeley, but essentially it was the telephone company. And then Berkeley did most of the original development on Unix. And the amazing thing is that 50, 60 more years from then, it's the operating system that basically runs most servers on the internet. I mean, like, in terms of computers, that is an anomaly. That is the biggest success story I can think of. I mean, like, computer technology gets obsolete fairly quickly, but here's an operating system that was written over 50 years ago that's pretty much dominant on the internet. That to me is just an amazing thing to wrap your brain around. But in the Unix operating system, and again, this predates the web and the internet, essentially the internet. This was the days of mainframes, and many people would have an account on one big computer. So everybody would have what's called a tilde account, which is your personal space on that computer.
Oh.
So, like, for example, let's say Crusoe is running this server, and then they're giving personal accounts on it. Well, if your name's John and you get an account on this server, then you would have what's called a tilde John account. And your URL would literally be crusoe.com/tilde-John. Now, there's a whole lot of subdirectories between the John directory and the root web directory, but the tilde is the shortcut that just takes you right to John's personal directory. So your tilde directory is your personal directory. And then within your tilde directory on that server, you could create a folder called public_HTML for your web pages. And so the convention is, if you go to blah/Joe, you go right to Joe's web pages. Even though you don't see the words public HTML in the URL, you don't see all the other subdirectories in the URL. The tilde is the shortcut on a Unix server to go right to Joe's pages, specifically his web pages.
Right.
So that tilde has a special meaning. And so a tilde in a URL has a special meaning. It means it's a personal Unix directory. That's how it works. The tilde, when you see a tilde something online, you're in a Unix server, you're going to a personal directory owned by somebody with that name that follows the tilde, and specifically you're going into their public HTML pages in their personal directory on the Unix server.
Wow.
So,
I remember my
tilde does have a kind of a special meaning in URLs. Now in
Right,
titles,
this is a
titles
title.
are different, but it's kind of a weird character, so
Okay.
tildes, yeah, they're okay. They're pretty. I use them in copy and things in headlines sometimes even. I generally don't use them in titles, but there's nothing wrong with that. But just be aware that tilde has a special meaning in URLs. Sorry, that was my explanation on tildes, so hope I didn't bore you with tildes.
Sometimes I also use the ampersand in my title because it's shorter than spelling out the word and.
And that makes sense, because again, you're maximizing the use of that real estate, those characters.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ampersands are very special characters in terms of HTML coding, but for what you're talking about in a title, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. Now, unless your business name uses the word and instead of the ampersand, I mean, you want to, talking about that cohesion and consistency, you probably want to be consistent in whether, if it's like the name of your company or part of your branding, whether you're using the ampersand all the time or the and sometimes, you want to be consistent. Okay. Ampersand's an even more special character in HTML code, because an ampersand is the beginning of any kind of a special character code in HTML. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it.
Okay. Questions?
We don't have to go till 6 o'clock tonight. We can end at any time. So if you have questions, I will stay here and answer them. But if nobody has any questions, I'll let you guys go. What you got? Clara, you stuck on something? What do you got?
Okay. The problem is I cannot show my screen from my computer. So I have a question from my website, but I think that you have to open my screen from your computer.
Let me see. Let me go to your page here. Let me get a browser. Where's my Chrome? Where's my Chrome?
I changed my theme and everything changed.
You changed your theme and everything changed. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, actually. That actually makes sense. In a second, you should see my screen. Are you seeing it? I hope. I'm waiting for my, for some reason, slow connection to load the page. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this in this class or not, but I've noticed that my host is now only doing live support at certain hours of the day because of the whole virus thing, which is annoying. Okay. Oh, I see you have a black text on a pretty dark background.
This is one of my questions. I would like to change the color of the typography.
Yeah.
I think the color is white, but I don't know how.
Okay. And you can't, let's see. So I will need to, I think I'll need to log in as you. I gotta, let me look up your password just a second here. Kerchunk, 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 kerchunk. I'm waiting. Kerchunk, 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 kerchunk. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Things seem to be a bit on the slow side today. Kerchunk, 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 kerchunk. Okay, that took some time.
I was having a trouble last night logging into my account, and it kept coming up with my first page, and then I'd go up to the top and try to log in, and it would say I had the wrong password, and it wasn't the wrong password. It was the weirdest thing.
So when that happens, Robin, here's the trick. Sometimes the browser caches some weird URL. So you see the URL up here?
Yeah.
I'm highlighting, it says designgurus.com/Clara/WP-admin. You make sure it says exactly that, but Robin instead of Clara, because sometimes it says something a little different and then it won't work right.
Okay.
So if that's happening, any kind of login problem, you look at that URL, and if it says designgurus.com/ your first name capitalized /WP-admin, that's where you need to be to log in. If it's anything else, it may like appear to be working, but it won't work right. And my guess is that when you're having trouble, that's not what it says right there at the top of the browser window. Okay. So, but if that's what it says, you shouldn't have trouble unless you're using the wrong password. So, but that's been my experience with browsers. Sometimes they cache something and you'll type this, but then you'll hit return and the browser will just shift something. And you won't notice it at first, and you're like, what's going on? What do you mean my password's not working or whatever? And that's usually what it is. It's usually the browser throwing some extra directory or something, or a page number, a page name in there that you were on recently. And you really have to kind of tame the browser, say, no, I want to go to my WP admin page, thank you. And make sure that your name is in that URL. Because if it's not worded just like that, it will sometimes appear to be the right place to log in, but then it won't work right. So my guess is that it's a browser caching issue, and browser caching drives me crazy in a number of ways. Because lots of times I'm working on style sheets and the browser just keeps caching the old style sheet. I have to force it to reload to see my new styles. Drives me crazy. Okay, so here we are in Clara's dashboard. Okay, so Clara, let's take a look. So one of the, as you guys know by now, just by doing this, you're kind of getting an idea of these are the places that are really important to check for things that you need to customize, like, okay, appearance, right? Appearance themes. Yeah. So appearance themes customize. This is a really like one of the first stations you go to. One of the first places, if you want to look at what you can do with a theme, is go to appearance themes customize. And this is sometimes where it has a colors or a fonts. Right? So let's take a look at what it gives us the options to change under colors. Now, these are not text colors. colors for links, buttons, and featured images, primary color, background color, header and footer background color. Well, that's not helpful in this context. So that would be one place. Now, some themes will actually have text color as one of these items, or text formatting or something. This one, unfortunately, does not. So where else can we look? We'll look in a few places. Let's look at homepage settings, because this is your homepage. That's just whether or not you want your latest post or static homepage. So that's not about the colors. Site identity is going to be not that. Well, let's just check site identity, because maybe there's a color. No, just the title and the tagline. Yeah, no, nothing about text color.
No.
Oops. So let's go back here and look at the CSS options that this theme gives you easily to edit. Well, actually, what's content options? I just want to see. No, okay, that's definitely content, not styling. Okay. Okay, so
The theme, the name is 2020.
right, it's the standard WordPress theme. So let's go to additional CSS, and yeah, add your own code here to customize the appearance of the layout. Yeah, this is about layout. Okay, so this, I'm assuming, is an H1 or a title. I'm going to look at your, okay, so here's the short story is the theme doesn't easily allow you to change the color of that text. So that's the short story, right? The short story is the theme
So I
does
have
not
to change
I'm sorry, what?
So I have to change the background image.
Well, okay, so you're a step ahead of me, right? So you've got two options. The easier option, I was going to say, is to change the background to be a lighter background. And actually, that's probably the best option, because the theme, given that the theme is doing dark text here, the theme is making the assumption that your background image is not dark. So even if we successfully, and it's not going to be hard to change this text, for example, to white, that doesn't mean there will be other places and other pages where the theme is still making that assumption that the background image is not very dark. And of course, you'd have to test that, look at different pages and so forth. But the easiest thing to do is to change that background image. That's easy. We can go into the CSS and figure out where to make this white. You don't know any coding, correct? I know you said you were, I know you've described yourself as a, quote, absolute beginner, which is fine. So I don't want to confuse you too much by getting into the code, because that could be scary.
Okay, so.
But I would say,
I prefer the easy option. Change the background for other color or other picture.
Yeah,
so. The other problem, very important, is the menu. I wrote many menus and never appears in the website.
The menus. Oh, okay. Well, you need to create a menu. Let's see here. Let me see. Oh, wait.
Yes,
let me see what you've already created. Let me see what you've got here. Bookshop. You have a menu with 4 things. Okay. So, okay, here's what's happened. You've created your menu, but you haven't placed it on the site yet. So you did the first of 2 steps. You selected the pages in the menu, and here they are. But you didn't say where to put the menu, you see? So it looks like you've got options here, and I'm not sure where social menu appears, but it's an easy enough thing to see when we try it. You probably don't want like the footer menu. I don't know why there's 2 social menus here.
I like the desktop.
Confusing.
Menu. The second.
You did this one. Okay, so let's try that. So it shows up here.
Oh, first time. Yes.
You see at the top? Is that what you want?
Oh, yes, I understand. Yes.
See, if I uncheck it, it goes away. So
what happened?
Now that's one menu. Now so yeah, so you can also since you have more than one menu, you can have more than one menu appear, like you created a bookshop and home of book art. Well, actually, this menu, you didn't really create this menu. You created the menu, but you didn't add any items to it. So this isn't really something you can use yet, but you could. You can create multiple menus, and depending on the theme you have, you may be able to have, see this theme gives you different locations for menus. So you could have a main menu, and then you could have a footer menu at the bottom for little links like, sitemap and so forth. You just haven't placed the menus yet. So it looks like you know how to create a menu and how to add items to it because you've done that here. So now you just have to use it by putting it somewhere. I don't know where that puts it. Let's try something. Footer menu. Just want to see what these look like. Footer menu. It's not showing me. Not showing me the way it, okay, which. Oh, okay, I see. It's calling that, that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of a weird theme. Yeah, it's your basic WordPress theme.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is, play with, put it in different locations, go to different pages and see how it looks.
Okay.
That's the easiest thing to do. And then, but the thing is, because you haven't checked anything here, that's why it's not being used. So you need to check one of these things. I'm going to leave it the way it was. I'll let you.
And then make sure that she hits publish when she's done, when she gets
Right.
the one she likes.
And also, it's giving you the option here. This is important. When you see mobile menu or desktop menus, right? You can have the same or a different menu for like the phone as opposed to a desktop. So, so you want to play with that a little bit. So if you make something under mobile menu, you might not see it on the desktop version, but you might see it when you look at the page on the phone. So realize that you have options here with these different locations for the menu. Okay?
Yeah.
Is that helpful? Does that answer your question, Clara?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
I have to
good.
work.
Okay.
Can you hit the social one before you leave?
The top
So
social one or the bottom social one?
I don't know, just
I don't know the difference between them until I play with it. Yeah, there's the top.
Yes, you can show us.
And to me, let me just see if it does something else. It still puts it at the top. Interesting. I don't know what this does. Ah, interesting. What if I uncheck that? Yeah, I don't quite understand the two. Now, of course, you can read about the theme and it will probably explain that a little more. But I really don't know why there's two of these and exactly where it puts it. Very confusing. Yeah.
I have a question about this.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like this is a blog post on our homepage.
Right, because
I think that there's like
yeah.
blog specific customization somewhere that might.
Well, if you go to your usually it's homepage settings. So she's got the blog page listed as the homepage as opposed to a static page.
Right, because that's how mine was.
Yeah, so you can do either in most themes.
And I had to go to like the blog page itself to edit anything on that page.
Right.
As opposed to the customize. So I don't know, since she's still learning if that might be helpful or if that's how hers works.
Yeah, it probably does. Probably here when you go to latest posts. Now what's going to happen is when it says latest posts, that doesn't give you super control. That's going to aggregate your posts and just probably in reverse chronological order, put the most recent post first and then go down the list. It'll probably display like several posts and then there'll be like a more or something to display more. But you really can't control too much of that with this theme. It's just going to automatically aggregate your latest posts. And so a lot of times people pick the static page just because they have a lot more control over how they want their homepage to look. If your site is merely it's an online journal and it's mostly about your blogging or whatever, then yeah, your latest post makes sense for your homepage. but a lot of times that doesn't make sense, and you have a lot more control to create the page look that you want here. Now, Clara, you had it on your latest post. I'm not going to change it. I'm going to leave it.
Other question.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. I think it's on the top of the title. I can read and categorize.
Right here.
I don't understand how I can change this because.
Okay, so that has to do with your categories. So if we go back, yeah, I don't want to make changes. We go back to your blog page and we go into the editor. So we go to your post pages. And you simply can create categories. So here you have 2 pages that are blog pages, right? So if you go here and you edit them, or edit this one specifically right now, I'll show you what that's from. When you create a blog, when you create a post, you can assign categories to that post. You have not created any categories, so by default, any post you create without making a category and putting it in there is going to be uncategorized. Now, you can create a new category. For example, it looks like this is about a bookstore. Do you want the category name to be books or bookstore or something like that?
Art books.
What did you say?
Painted books.
Painted books. Okay. I don't know if you want it capitalized or not, but I'll capitalize it. Painted books. Oops.
Painted.
So now I'm going to add this new category.
Painted.
Forgot a letter in there.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, painted typo. Thank you. Painted books. So I'm going to add this. You can change, Clara, this is all changeable. You can create or remove these at any time. So if you want to change it, no problem. And you can uncheck the uncategorized so that doesn't show up, right? And now I can update. And now it will say painted books at the top of that page instead of uncategorized.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Did I publish it?
Yes.
I think I'm still waiting here. I thought I did. Okay, preview. I don't know why everything's so slow here. Let me click again. Okay. So you should see that at the top instead of uncategorized. So you see now, and then see the nice thing is if somebody clicks on that, they'll see all the posts in that category, which is only this one. So yeah, the easiest thing for you really want to change that background to something nice and light, because it's really yeah. But anyway, but now you see with the categories, whenever you have a post, the category appears, and you can have the same post in more than one category, and because maybe it falls under several different categories. And then whenever somebody clicks on the category, they will see all the posts in that category. So it's a really handy way to organize your information, and it makes it easier for people using your site to find the stuff that they're most interested in. So categories only applies to posts. It does not apply to pages. So that's an essential difference. So if you go to pages, you will not have the option to create or have categories. These are not categorized, right? So there won't be any option here for that because these are pages, you see. So it's only when you go to edit the posts that you can deal with categories. So we get different things here, but we don't get the ability to categorize. But for any posts, you can use categories, and when you create categories, they're used by anything. So you only have to create the category once for all different pages. So here, now on this page, you could also assign that to painted books and not uncategorized. Or you could not have it either way, and then the word uncategorized, nothing would show up under it, above it. So you wouldn't see uncategorized, you wouldn't see painted books if nothing was checked, you see?
Yeah, I think this is the remains of the other theme list, because I have to update these pages. Yeah,
so whenever
using
you
the new
create a
theme.
post, you can assign it to a category or add a new category and assign it to that category or multiple categories. Is that helpful? Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, very simple question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. What other questions do you folks have?
I am working in, for example, these pages I did in the other themes. So I have to erase this and create new pages using the 2020 theme.
No, you don't have to. No.
No?
The pages transfer over from theme to theme. No.
Oh.
No. In fact, the opposite. So that's one of the nice things about WordPress is you can change themes and you don't have to create new content. Now, sometimes if you've customized the theme a lot and you change themes, then you might have to make some changes because you may have edited the old theme in a way to not display certain things or display certain things in a way that the new theme doesn't want to do it that way. But generally speaking, when you change themes, you don't have to go in here and change the content at all. Some themes may emphasize the category names more than others. So maybe you want to pay more attention to the categories in certain themes, but generally speaking, no, you change themes, you don't have to go in here and change this again.
Okay, but this is, I don't like the color white on
well, yeah, if you may want to change the theme just because you don't like the colors. But if you haven't done much customization, you have a lot of freedom to keep trying different themes until you find one that you like. So you might want to, instead of like trying to change that background image, you might want to just try a couple different themes.
Yes, this is the exercise. Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's good.
Thank you.
More questions?
I have one plugin that has wanted to update like every day this week. Is that unusual? is that, I mean, I've been doing it, but is that,
it sounds like Zoom. It sounds like Zoom.
I mean,
I
does
think
that
there's a
just
Zoom
mean that
update
the
every other day.
developer is actively?
Well, you know, you could interpret that.
Zoom update.
I can interpret that two different ways. I can interpret it one way saying, wow, this is a really responsible developer who's really doing a lot of work on this theme. That's really great. And I could interpret that another way thinking, wow, this person, maybe they don't have their act together because they keep, making changes like every day. And to be honest with you, I don't know which way to interpret that. You'd have to kind of dig a little deeper.
If it keeps happening, I don't know, I might wonder, but what it is, it's a plugin that I found to organize my media folder into
good, yeah. Yeah, in fact,
into separate folders, which I really love.
Those kinds of plugins are almost essential for anybody that has a lot of images, because by default, Word just throws all the images in this one big media library. And over time, that's just ridiculous. It's unwieldy. So there are a lot of plugins to manage your media library so that you can have subdirectories of the different kinds of images and you can find stuff easier. It just makes a whole lot more sense. Now, I would probably give that developer the benefit of the doubt and think this person's really responsible. They keep fixing bugs. They keep adding functionality. Maybe it's a function of the fact that this person's now sitting at home all day rather than working in a job because of the virus. And so since they have all this time, they're sitting there and they're doing more theme development or more plugin development rather. So that's a good thing, right? But I don't really know the full story. I would say sounds generally good because updates are generally done to either fix a security hole or to add functionality, right? So, and those are good things. So, unless of course the thing is such a security problem that they have to keep updating it all the time. So,
Yeah, I didn't click
I'm
on
not
it.
100% sure what's going on now.
I didn't click on anything to see the reason for the update. You know, it like sometimes I know sometimes like if it says like I know like iOS stuff like for my iPad, if there's an update to something, I'll click on it and it'll give you like the reason or what it's going to do when it updates. With this, I've just been saying, okay, update it, you know, but today it was like the third day in a row that it's told me that it wanted to update, third or maybe fourth day in a row. So I updated.
Yeah,
It
so
doesn't
I
look
don't
any
really
different.
know.
It doesn't look like it's acting any different.
Well, is there any background on the updates? Lots of times they'll just have a quick list like this
Yeah, I'll have to
update
look.
fixes this nasty bug, and this update adds this functionality, and this update blah, blah, blah. Did they give you any information on the updates? They should. They
Right,
should.
that's what I mean. Yeah, I didn't check that. I just clicked on, okay, update or whatever.
Yeah,
So it
usually they'll give
comes up
you at
again.
least a very brief reason for the update.
Okay.
So it's generally good when something's updated frequently. Once or more a day seems a little more than usual, but again, it could be a function of this person doesn't have a job now and they're at home all day. I don't really,
But there's also a
I don't know.
There's a support tag when I'm looking at the plugins. There's info about it, and it says view details, learn more about this, and it says there's a support link. So maybe I'll email support and just ask, you know, what's the deal with the updates every day.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to ask.
Okay.
It certainly would pique my curiosity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Yeah, it's a cool plugin. It's called Real Media Library Free.
Well, this is the kind of plugin that is one that is generally necessary for anybody with a lot of images. So I would say if it works really well for you, that would definitely be something you could highlight in your presentation next week.
Right. Okay, I will.
And before I forget, so I'm looking at my weekly schedule for next week, and so I haven't figured it all out yet, but I'm going to have at least an hour a day next week for our class and for my my DM60 class too. So I'm trying to juggle them all, fit them all in, so that I'm essentially available every day till we're done, just to make sure everybody's questions are answered as quickly as possible in an interactive way. So please keep gathering your questions. And
This will we have presentations or do presentations.
anytime you want to do it next week.
Okay.
I mean, as long as your site's, you know, reasonably close to where you want it to be. It doesn't have to be completely finished, but, you know, it can't just be completely unfinished.
As long as there's content on every page, there's no like blank filler pages or something.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you know, let's say it's, you know, close to what you want, you know, that you've got all the plugins or most of the plugins you're going to use, that kind of stuff.
So I have a question then. I have on my site right now about 4 or 5 different gallery plugins just because I kind of just keep wanting to test them out. Do you want me to change that over to just using one, or can I just leave it that way for
Whatever works for you. The general rule with plugins, as I've said, is that if you're not using it, you should deactivate it. And if you think you're never going to use it, just delete it. But if you're using them, keep them activated. And if they're playing well together and they're not hurting each other, because there could be conflicts with the same kind of plugin. But if you have them on different pages, they're not interfering. Some plugins will even play well on the same page together. It depends on the plugins. Generally, gallery plugins, you're not mixing them on the same page. But you could, if they play well together, and you have a reason to do that because one does one thing and you have a slideshow at the top of the page and you have something else on another part of the page, you know. So sometimes you do mix a couple together, but 5 is a lot. But if you have a reason to use them.
But I'm still just testing out, well, which one do I want to keep, because I don't totally like any of them yet.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if you use them on different pages, they usually won't bother each other. And so you can just keep testing them, and then when you do decide you want to deactivate some, then you deactivate them. But yeah, that's a good, you know, you're focusing on a certain plugin and you're doing the research and you're testing them. That's what you want to do. Yep.
I have a quick
Nothing wrong with
question. I have a quick question about that.
Mhm.
So I got a gallery plugin and I have no idea if I'm using it or not. Do I have to do something special
You have no
to make
idea.
it appear there?
Well, there's an easy way. Okay, Robin, there's an easy way to figure that out. Deactivate the plugin and see if anything changes on your site. So if you're not sure if you're using it, that's a pretty, so if you deactivate it and you don't notice anything, then you probably weren't using it. And you deactivate it and all of a sudden your banner image at the top of your homepage disappears or something, then okay. Yeah, just deactivate it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I still feel like a little freaked out about touching things and having something go, blah, so.
Well, in general, the mere changing of a theme and the mere activation or deactivation of a plugin is completely reversible with no changes, as long as you don't then make additional changes while you're in this other theme or using another plugin or something. And even then, still, it depends on what you're changing. So you can be a little more fearless and experiment. So yeah, you can just activate a different theme, deactivate or activate a different plugin. And as long as that's all you're doing, it doesn't permanently change anything. And you can always go back and activate or deactivate or change the theme back to this or change it to something else. So that's the power of a content management system like this.
Okay.
Because the WordPress structure, your information is stored in a database, right? So there's two basic parts of standard content management systems under the hood. There's the database, which is a SQL structured query language database. And then there are a series of PHP includes. Those are the two basic building. There's more, of course. There's some JavaScript and some other stuff thrown in there. But those are the two basic building blocks of WordPress or of Joomla or Drupal or pretty much almost all the major content management systems. Now, the really, really heavy duty, super large corporate ones are a little more complicated, but virtually all of them are the same in that there's PHP and MySQL. And so the SQL database has the information. So every time you make a blog post, that content is stored as a record in the database, right? And then WordPress templates are made up of PHP includes, which are little blocks of PHP code that grab from this piece of data and throw it on that part of the page. And they grab that from the database and they throw that in the footer. And they grab that from the database and they put that in the paragraph, whatever. And so it's a standard system. So then what the different themes are doing is they're just grabbing the data and displaying it in a different way. So by changing the theme, you're not changing the data. You're just changing the way that data is displayed or formatted or thrown onto the page. And so it's pretty easy to go change a lot of different themes. So if you know what a PHP include is, what I said makes a lot of sense. If you don't, it might not make as much sense.
Okay,
But,
no, I get the idea, the general idea, so that helps. Yeah, not be so freaked out.
yeah, don't be so freaked out.
Okay, thanks.
Good questions. We can take a break and come back, or we can keep going, or we can stop because it's already been an hour and 20 minutes, so I don't want to keep going much longer without a break. But if you don't think you want to go much longer, then we'll just end soon. So what kind of questions are lurking that you haven't asked yet? I hear crickets, or not really. I don't hear anything.
There a certain
I don't even hear
amount-
my landlord doing construction next to my house.
John?
They're building this unit that they shouldn't be. Anyway, yeah, Debbie.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how many people are going to want to do presentations, but should we try to limit our presentation to a certain amount of time? Is that
We can, I think we'll have, it sounds to me like we'll have plenty of time because there are a lot more people in the class, but you guys are the ones that always show up to some people just watch the videos and some people aren't doing anything. But you guys are probably the ones that will keep showing up. There's one or two more of you that sometimes show up, right? So, you know, if there's 8 or 9 people, we'll have plenty of time. Again, because we can do them all next week. So, I mean, I don't want a half-hour presentation. I don't think anybody wants to do that. But hey, 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
The presentations are the most fun part.
Okay.
Especially because people are going to say, wow, that's a really cool gallery plugin. What's the name of it? Why did you pick that one? How does that work? Wow, how come you picked that one to manage your media library? I like that. And what's the name of that? So that's where we'll learn some more things. But I'm kind of getting the feeling like we're done.
Could be done.
Okay, so as always, I'll get this video posted sometime tonight. All the videos, of course, are online. I will send you out the schedule probably tonight for next week. It'll look a little similar to this one. I'm going to make a few changes. I got several meetings to work around. In fact, I have a meeting coming up at 4, I just realized. Okay. Anyway, Zoom. I was in a Zoom cocktail hour last night. Actually, I was in, believe it or not, Thursday at 7 seems to be a very popular time for Zoom happy hours because my tenor sectional has their Zoom happy hour, and my friend Rupert has his Zoom party weekly, both at 7. And so I went back and forth a little, but I was in my first meeting that got Zoom bombed, and it was kind of intense.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that somebody uninvited comes in and starts just, blasting music and posting obscenities in the chat and putting up pictures of nude models for people to view, and it's like all kinds of bizarre, it's kids, I think. So that they're out there, and that's what they do. And so my friend Rupert, he up until yesterday, he would post the URL on his Facebook page of the party. Well, that turns out to be not so great an idea. So that happened, and it just like wigged it, and there were like 20, 25 people, and all of a sudden, where's all that coming from? It was this complete chaos, and I had to cut the meeting and then reestablish it with the waiting room and only let people into the meeting through the waiting room. I haven't had to do that. I don't like creating friction, and one of the reasons I don't publish the URL somewhere is because then you get Zoom bombers. So if I publish this anywhere, other than emailing it to you directly, people can Zoom bomb very easily. People are just looking for that. There's,
Is it safe to put
teenagers in Romania. I don't know who it is, but there's, people just look for this stuff.
Is it safe to put it on the help forum, John?
Yeah, because that's behind a password. So yeah, the help form is not public; it's behind a password. So that's fine. But you wouldn't want to put this on a Facebook page,
right?
Or a website, or send it out in a group email to a lot of people that you don't know. Just the Zoom bombing thing is a real thing, and I hadn't experienced it before last night. I've read about it. We all read about these things, but it was kind of intense. I was like, whoa, and all these obscenities are being yelled out, and the scribbling on the screen and blaring. I mean, you couldn't do it. It was complete chaos, and so it just host had to end the meeting. So be aware. Yeah, the Zoom bombing thing is interesting, but I'll send out that schedule, huh?
If only those people put that much energy into like something positive in the world. Imagine how much better things would be in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably like 13-year-olds with nothing.
I hope they're children.
Well, if they're not, they're just pretty
yeah.
socially stunted. But
so we have a lot of those.
I mean, I have no idea who it is, but but it's a real thing, the Zoom bombing, and they look for Zoom invitations online. They search for them.
Yeah.
So, and posting it on a Facebook page is probably a bad idea.
And my husband had to do that with his class because he has 140 students in his class.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So it's really hard to like regulate that many people and know. So
it is. So you can use passwords, but even passwords can get shared around too. So the waiting room is the best solution. But then if you have a lot of people, that's a little more of a hassle.
Yeah. So they have it set up through UCSC, and you have to have a UCSC email to get in. And so, but it's just still like.
So the Zoom bombing is a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I understand people are also people that are like live streaming on Facebook. A lot of people live stream stuff. It's the same kind of problem. And then I heard of people getting kind of in trouble with Facebook because somebody would bomb their Facebook live stream with obscenities and bizarre pictures and everything, and then Facebook would shut down their account because they're violating the terms of service. So you have to be really careful with this stuff.
And it's not easy to get it back up either.
With Facebook, I bet, yeah.
They put you in
I'm gonna
Facebook
leave.
jail.
Diane.
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 Okay, so I guess we'll end. And I will see you guys on Monday. I'll send out that schedule tonight. And stay happy and healthy, and
You too.
see you
Okay.
Monday.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
weekend.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.